Hello, Jack.
Oh, I was just about to ask you to begin it. Well done. Thank you.
Hello, the listener. Welcome to another episode 35. We never do this. We never have an intro. I don't know what I'm doing.
Welcome to episode 35. Jack is just realizing that he said his microphone
podcast you're listening to. That's not the first time somebody's made that joke at the start of a podcast.
Yeah, hey, zing. I wrote down 35 in my notes, and I was like, 35. Seems like a number, 34, I was like, I don't know, 35. Look at that.
No, it's halfway to 40.
Oh, I see what you mean. 35, folks, halfway to 40. We're doing math on this podcast.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. No, it's not halfway to 40, is it?
It's part of the way.
But given that we're registering the time passing in these podcasts in groups of 10.
Yes, very true.
The last milestone was 30. And now we're
geez.
halfway to the next milestone, which is 40.
My God.
Unless you want to make 35 like a subcategory milestone, which I'm totally down for doing, really.
Yeah, I think subcategory milestone.
Yeah.
We've been doing this for 35 weeks.
Uh-huh.
My God. Not much has changed, I'll say that right now. Well, here we are, Dan. You know what I meant to ask you about last week? Well, I meant to bring it up last week is that King Gizzard put an album out last Friday. And I always feel like we should... I don't know, just in passing talk, just to notice that they put something out because they gave us permission to use their song.
Mm-hmm. Wink, wink. Well,
wink,
you asked for permission.
I did ask for permission several times.
So that's and not receiving a negative reply is tantamount to consent.
They did read it on Twitter, so
okay.
I think that's a yes.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, new album, Butterfly 3000.
Yeah.
What'd you think?
I've started listening to it twice, and I got further in the second time. It's cool. I like it.
It's different.
It's up my street in terms of like. It's just I don't know how you describe it. It's kind of like
it's just poppy. Isn't it?
It's quite poppy. Sort of like poppy lyrics. Not in terms of vocal style. I don't know what the lyrics are necessarily. I can't really remember. Some of them have like synths and keyboards and that kind of thing. I mean, it might be all sort of guitar work that's being put through a synthesizer. I don't know. I'm not a musicologist.
I saw them describe it as their most.
Is it lo-fi? I don't know what lo-fi means.
I don't know. It's a little hi-fi. I saw them describe it as their most hedonistic album yet, which I thought was pretty cool. It's just very like they're just singing about having fun. It's like, oh, good for you guys.
I see. Okay.
Just having
it's
a good
nice.
time.
Yeah, it's nice.
It's nice.
I mean, maybe it's meant to be it's meant to be like really concise social critique of like the decadence of our society. Who knows?
I don't know. It's good, folks. Go listen to it. It's funny. I've only really, really vibed with like 3 of the songs. Usually I'm just like, every single song on this album is so good. And they're all good, but 3 of them are great. I'll say that. So yeah, folks, go listen to it. That's your plug for this week. And what else? I feel like I should also, I've been meaning to do this, broad bean update perhaps for the last time, just because I ate some of my broad beans finally. They're very good. Very, very good. I've been kind of boiling the beans for like 30 seconds or so, taking them out, mixing them with a little bit of garlic, a little bit of pepper, some olive oil, just putting it on toast. Delicious. Smell like garlic for the rest of the day.
So now we have an answer to a question we asked ourselves back in, you asked yourself back in like episode 4 or something, which is, I don't even know whether I like broad beans.
Yeah, what am I supposed to do with the broad beans?
So now we know. Jack from the past.
I don't know.
From the future or something.
Yeah, this was ostensibly to answer questions we had about socialism. Nah, we haven't answered any of those questions yet, just about broad beans. So, yeah.
I also have some broad beans, so I should eat some of them.
Dan's garden looking very good,
yeah.
I'll say.
I have been very jealous of Jack's broad beans because his plants are very, very tall, and I've just been chalking it up to better sunlight and less wind and, I don't know, better soil or something. And then it was pointed out to me that my broad beans are dwarf broad beans, so that's why they're half the size of Jack's ones.
I think I might have gotten giant.
So I don't have to
beans.
feel some kind of like gardening inferiority. It's fine.
Mine are a little unruly. They're into that point where it's like, all right, relax, fellas.
Relax, fellas, or you're going in the compost.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody tell them they're going in the compost anyway.
I made a conscious effort to bring the shells, like the pods of the broad beans, back to the allotment to put in the compost as a very like metabolic
to the to reduce the metabolic rift between the food you eat and what you can restore back into the soil.
So I'm at least doing that. That's good. I don't know if I brought this up on an episode or not, but a while ago I was walking through a local graveyard and I saw that's like presumably the groundskeeper, whoever had like collected all of the flowers that were kind of rotting or whatever, and had put them all like to be thrown away or whatever. And so I took a bag of those and put them in the allotment. I thought there was something kind of poetic about that, but I think I just kind of like stole flowers from a graveyard. But they were going to be thrown away. So
Yeah. I always, whenever I'm walking through the cemetery and I see like one of the bins just full of bouquets of flowers,
Yeah.
I sort of like, I don't know, I don't know, it makes me feel uncomfortable, you know?
Yeah, I know.
I mean,
yeah.
having the flowers rotting on the grave is probably also not what you want, but like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's a custom out here that we don't do back home, which is you'll see cans of beer on graves. And I was informed that that's because people will come by and like, quote unquote, like have a beer with somebody on the grave. Like you see a can of Foster's or something. And that's cool. But what I think is cooler is that presumably the groundskeeper like lets it sit there for a week or two.
It's like your parents eating the mince pie for Father Christmas at Christmas.
Yeah, whatever that means. It's just a little treat.
You mean you don't leave things out for Santa Claus?
Yes, we
Okay.
leave things out for Santa. What do we leave? Cookies. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Still haven't figured out what mince pies are. I thought there was meat in them for a long time, so whenever anyone would ask me if I wanted one, I'd be like, no. But it's just spice?
I really like mince pie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It's
fruit?
it's like, what is it? Yeah, it's fruit mostly. Spiced fruit.
Spiced fruit.
Yeah.
All right.
I think yeah, for a long time people, I don't know whether they ever had like meat in them, but they used to have like, maybe they used to have a fat from
Oh,
some kind of
yeah,
meat
like
in it.
suet
It
or
had suet
something.
in it. Ordinarily,
Ugh.
they used to have suet in it. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a non-vegetarian mince pie.
Gotcha.
Finding vegan mince pies is often quite difficult.
Oh, well, I guess just like butter in the pastry. or
Yeah, I
something.
mean the cheap ones just have milk in it because like every cheap food stuff is just bulked out with some amount of milk, and posh ones are like butter mince pies. So did find some nice mince pies in the co-op.
Really?
Yeah, it was actually last September.
Okay.
The only shop bought mince pies I had in the entirety of last year were mid last September. But they were nice.
I always wonder how much of a co-op is. I suppose it is. I mean, I used to work for a co-op, and I'll tell you, it's exactly the same. As
I don't know whether it's a co-op in terms of the employees or have sort of
shares or
traditionally
something.
what you would think of as a role in a co-op, like whatever that is. Like, yeah, I don't know. Or whether it's like a consumer co-op kind of thing. They definitely sell a membership, and you can be a member of, like a consuming member of that co-op kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't really understand co-ops. I don't
Oh,
really-
co-ops
just the
in general, or are
concept.
we talking about the British chain shop, the co-op in particular?
Co-ops in general.
Oh, okay.
I don't really understand them.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I complained that it was just like working for a normal company.
It's
but
capitalism, folks.
I mean, yeah, so there you go. But I mean, I also was like bottom of the food chain. Why would I have shares? Like I'm just,
Yeah, I
the
mean,
warehouse
like
guy.
I suppose it would be hard. You'd have to put a deliberate effort into not developing a split workforce where you have shareholders and non-shareholders. I mean,
Zero
I don't know. My basic understanding or a critique of co-ops is that if you're a cooperative operating under a capitalist system, you still have to adhere to production based. There is still in that mode of production, in the capitalist mode of production, there is still competition on the grounds of socially necessary labor time. You basically you end up exploiting yourself, right?
Wage
because
labor.
you have to exactly, and it's still wage labor. CERF said 2 weeks ago for a critique of wage labor.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, maybe we'll do something.
Whoa, wait a minute. Should that be our transition?
Yeah, why not?
Dan, what are we reading this week? We're back.
This week we've read the middle third of the fundamental principles of communist production and distribution.
Again, rolls right off the tongue.
Yeah, we're getting quite good at that now. Back by very popular demand.
Yes, actually, kind of.
Thank you to everybody who listened to that episode.
Yeah, and thanks for everybody.
Thank you for everybody.
Thank you,
to
everybody. Thank you to the people who've been commenting on YouTube, because if you don't know, we put all our episodes up on there, and it's cool because that's like, you don't comment on a podcast, you know what I mean? So it's cool to get some like, oh, people are actually listening. That's very cool.
It's funny how the various platforms have their various different. I was about to say etiquette. What's the right? I suppose like
Culture.
conventions.
Yeah, there you
I
go.
suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And then I
Yeah.
say it's strange, and then I stop talking, so I clearly don't have anything to say to elaborate the strangeness. But
You know what I saw today is that some podcast inked a deal with Spotify to be like, I guess the deal is you'd only put podcasts on Spotify, and it was like measured in the tens of millions of dollars. It's like,
Isn't that what Joe Rogan did?
I think so. Yeah, I just had no idea it was that much money.
Yeah.
It's like, what is being created here? Like,
Oh, I
is it
see.
worth
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
I mean, it's insane, right? Like when I was working for like a very tiny record label, it was just like, cool. We literally get. It's like I would do the taxes and it would come back, money from Spotify measured in like $1 to $2.
Is Spotify one of these platform companies that doesn't actually make any money?
Presumably,
Yeah.
It's a tech company.
Yeah.
It's not making any money.
None of them make any money.
Where does that money come from? We got to do an episode figuring out where money like that comes from. 'Cause it's just like, sure, 60 million.
Yeah.
Give it to them. Why not?
What's the Softbank, isn't it? It's a Saudi-based investment company that
Here we
just
go.
like invest money in startups.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
No, Jack, it's not cool.
What's our model? Do we have any Saudi
Yeah, how do we
listeners?
get some Softbank money?
Softbank
I mean,
money.
we have to make ourselves a platform first. Presumably, we have to have like Wi-Fi connectivity or something. I mean, I've had my first dose now, but presumably you don't get like improved Wi-Fi signal until you have your second dose.
Oh, I'm getting my dose this week too.
Hey.
So I'll have a good Wi-Fi
Hey.
connectivity. So, you know what?
Just in time to have the lockdown, the pseudo state of lockdown that we're in this country extended for another 4 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. You told me something, or you reminded me of something very funny the other day while we're on the subject of tech companies, which is that there's like nearby.
Oh, I don't know whether to talk about that.
All right, I'll cut that out. Where were we just talking about? Yeah, tech sucks.
Yeah. You can leave it in.
Yeah. Well,
Tech
we'll
sucks.
see. Well,
Yeah.
Tech does suck. We'll leave that in, definitely. All right. Well, yeah, let's go back to talking about the book, I guess.
Smooth transition.
Yeah, smooth transition. We did have a smooth transition, and then we lost it. So, okay,
That's all right.
folks.
It's totally like on brand.
That's our brand, Softbank. We read chapters 5 through 11.
Yeah.
Yes, we read chapters 5 through 11. Good for us. We're on our way to finishing what will amount to the third book that we've read for the show. Ella Mixon's Wood, Miliband, this,
And Cybernetic Revolutionaries.
and Cybernetic Revolutionaries, Eden Medina. Yeah, that's right. All right, so yeah, we're getting there. Yeah. About a book every 10, maybe.
I think that was what that was a target that you set
That was a
for us,
target.
Jack.
It was a target.
Yeah. It's a target.
Yeah, exactly. Don't know who's target.
I mean, I'm not going to accept any targets for this podcast that are not objectively pitiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not going to go beyond that.
Yeah.
Like we're on a scale.
Well, otherwise
As
we
long
don't
as
get
we're like
pity.
on the scale of like
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Professional
Run one.
podcasters.
Yeah.
All right.
We're
Let's get back in it.
totally amateur podcasters.
Yeah. That's one thing we can guarantee is being amateur at the act of podcasting. Chapter 5.
Uh-huh.
Let's talk about that maybe first.
Yeah, I feel like 2 weeks ago we decided that this book was good. Do we still concur with the idea that this book is pretty good?
I am, I'm still all over this book. It still rocks so much. And again, you keep getting the like meme leftcom image in your head stereotype blown out of the water because they come across, Dan, as very reasonable.
Uh-huh.
And as we'll see here in chapter 5, titled "The Libertarian Communism," they throw shade to the left, definitely
Yeah.
too. And you realize that they're not as far left as you think, and maybe that other people are further right. Or maybe they're just not as further left as you thought.
Uh-huh.
But it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a difference between right and left. It's a difference between right and wrong.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And what do they say in the end of the first paragraph in that section? Everybody else's ideas on communism is a desert of
It's
mediocrity.
an infertile wasteland of uniformity. It's brutal.
Yeah. That uniformity is also incredibly mediocre. Spoilers.
It is. And it almost just seems lazy because they basically make the point that, like, obviously we spoke about in the last episode we did on this about their critiques of Bolsheviks, social democrats, all of that. It's just kind of like, guys, you need a unit of account. And I mean, that basically just comes back again here as saying to what, libertarian communism, I think they define as like syndicalism, anarchism, etc. It's it's almost the same critique because it's just like, yeah, okay, good ideas, guys, but like, let's think about it. How's this actually going to work? And the question that they pose is, I got it written down here. Basically, what are the conditions where workers actually control production themselves?
Yeah.
Because so much of this, even the like anarchist stuff, just comes back as being like, someone will assign you what you should have,
Yeah.
or they'll figure it out. It's top down, basically, to throw back to Palmatic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got the impression that the critique, a portion of the critique anyway, is this, that like the libertarian communists, the anarchists seem to be falling back on an idea of like almost human nature, you know, like the better angels of people's nature will emerge once they're sort of liberated to operate a free economy kind of thing. But also, as you say, like there is this expectation that there will be in the examples of actual worked out systems that they present as being libertarian communist in nature or in structure, there is still always some amount of central authority kind of thing.
Yeah.
There is still a planning body of some sort or other. And as you say, it's the same critique as we saw last week. There is no proposed unit of account that would guide, I suppose, this activity. Well, it's not even that the unit of account guides the activity of planning. Like the unit of account, as we might come on to, like allows for planning to happen without sort of central diktat, I suppose.
Yeah, because there's always something being centrally dictated, whether it's like your wage or like what you can do with, you know, the value that you create, how much of that you get to keep, or prices, or just like actual distribution of things. And so the plan that they kind of put forward is like, okay, well, if you have this unit of account, that basically makes it possible for all of that, like, quote unquote, state that would be required for like a transition period in communism towards higher communism. It's that unit of account is itself the thing that's making that state, quote unquote, wither away. And so it's basically like a way of just like solving the problem in like the methods that you're using to solve the problem, if that makes sense. There's a better way to say it, but I can't think of it.
Yeah, I mean, later on they do give a very good articulation of the process for the withering away of the state kind of thing. But yeah, certainly, hopefully we'll remember that and get onto it when we get there. Yeah, I mean, I guess the other aspect of the critique of the libertarian socialism is there, again, this distinction between, well, they quote from Marx the idea of communism or socialist society being that of the society of free and equal producers.
Yeah.
And they suggest that the libertarian communists are coming down very heavily on the side of free, at least in some of the guises and some of the libertarian communist and anarchist versions that they're discussing. There is this idea that we're just going to transfer ownership of the productive, the workplace or the factory or whatever to the workers, and make them free to dispose of it in whichever way they want. And we sort of tried to talk about this a little bit earlier, but it was a little bit 2 weeks ago. But it was only earlier today that I kind of came up with an idea or a way of thinking about it for myself, which was to think of free and equal as being sort of like as counterposed piece of terminology rather than synonyms kind of thing. Like their system is designed to make workers free in the sense that they have control, they have ownership of the means of production, they have control over the disposal of the product, but also that freedom is curtailed by generally agreed upon rules which make everybody equal to a system of production and equal to each other and equal to society kind of thing. And it's that degree of equality which they're suggesting that the libertarian socialists, the libertarian anarchists, the libertarian communists rather, the anarchists, the all assorted
left comms.
I was going to collect together some insults, but I'll stop.
The liberals.
all assorted anarchist comrades miss out on the equality aspect and fixate on the freedom aspect.
Yeah.
Which is something that we also saw when we were looking at Hal Draper and his critique of people like Proudhon and also Bakunin to some extent.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. It's the same thing of wanting to live in a society but be free from it.
Yeah.
And it is interesting when you said that about those two things kind of being counterposed, because it's like, yeah, I don't know. Like, when I think of the system that our council communist friends are putting forward here, it does seem extremely free. It's like,
Yeah.
obviously they're basing this system on the system that we're in now, kind of, to a certain extent, but it's like, it seems extremely free. Like, you would have so much freedom to do whatever you want, but it's also like, okay, if you want to live in a society, you got to live in a society.
It is the collectivity, it is the community that allows for freedom. As you say, you're not free from society. But yeah, like the anarchists want to be part of it and free, whereas the council communists here are representing, well, freedom comes from being part of society, part of the collective. Operating upon generally agreed principles, which you have an equal say in determining.
Exactly.
And also, it is the fundamentals that they're presenting are the thing which facilitate the functioning of a free society, which is their argument, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they say that the theory, such as it exists, doesn't go beyond everything to the workers. And it's like, okay, what does that mean? You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't know. You were saying that this book can be a little wordy at times, and I didn't come across that. But then when you said that, I was like, you're right, it is, because it can be a little bit like, here's what everybody else thinks. Here's what everybody else thinks. Here's what everybody else thinks. And you're like, oh, is this what they're saying? And it's like, then they're like, no, you fools. And it's like, okay. So like that chapter could have been kind of summarized as just like, there's no theory beyond everything to the workers.
Yeah.
And so there you go. Yeah. Should we bring the cat in?
I'm not letting the cat in, no. But I don't let Margaret come in here anymore.
Oh, really? At all?
Well, we're having a trial period.
She's been peeing.
Yeah.
Well,
anyway, what were we talking about?
Anyway, I don't know. I was just gonna say, unless there's anything else to say on our libertarian communist friends, this book does a very good job of answering questions that you have when you have them as you're reading. It's like each question you kind of go, well, okay, this makes sense, but think about it like this. And the next chapter is like, well, if you think about it like this, here's the solution to that. And I think the biggest question that I had coming into it was like, one was about exchange, I guess, because it was just about like, okay, well, how does leather get to the shoemaker? How does that exchange happen? And the solution that they come up with is pretty interesting, and it took me a couple times to read through until I got it, because for a lot of this, you do really have to get through, like, past your kind of capitalist brain, if that makes sense, and be able to think about, well, okay, what if things work differently? Sure, what do you want to do with the cat? It's up to you.
What's wrong?
You want to come up here? You stay there.
We have a cat, folks.
We got a cat with third mic. All right, we'll see how this goes. Seems all right so far. But yeah, exchange. It's just, I don't know. It's funny because for a lot of it, they just basically make the point of like, these things won't be an exchange. It'll just be a transfer. And when you kind of just go, all right, well, like, is that a cop-out, just changing the word? But then you kind of understand what they're saying. And it's like, when you take private property out of the equation, as like the revolution would have to do, it becomes a lot more palatable, I suppose. I don't know if you had that experience.
Yeah, we get some more. Yes. Yeah. I mean, we get some more instances of them changing words. Well, changing things fundamentally, but in ways which might go unrecognized to some extent. Like they're like exchange, as they describe it as a function of capitalism. Is predicated on private ownership of, well, means of production, but private ownership also of products, kind of thing. You have to own something to exchange it, and they're saying that everything as it circulates everything as it circulates in the communist economy doesn't actually have an owner other than society at large, kind of thing. So therefore, there is no individual exchange at. When any product or any piece of circulating capital moves from one, what do they call it, productive unit to another, kind of thing. There doesn't need to be any relationship between the two other than one unit telling the other how many hours of labor they've put into a thing, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's you when you hear that and you hear like abolition of wage labor, you immediately would probably be like, well, what's the incentive? Why would anybody do this? But I mean, this isn't like an anarchist society where there are just no rules, dude, and you hope everybody figures this out. It's like you still have to work. Like you still have to work, otherwise you're not going to be able to like have the means of consumption to like go get things. I don't want to say buy, but like go, and I also don't want to say exchange, so I'll just say again, go get things. But like that incentive is still there. You still got to work. So it's like transferring these things. Yeah, you'd just be like, okay, here.
yeah. I mean, they're taking that principle that we came across in Marx last week in the critique of the Gotha program, where like one society emerges from the other, with all of the sort of traits of the society from which it comes, kind of thing. So some of the operating principles have to seem familiar. Like there isn't, like they do commit to the idea that we also came across reading the critique of the Gotha program last week, that socialism, just like any other mode of production, I suppose, is a sort of like staged thing, and the transition between one and the other has various stages. And they do think that you might get to the point where people aren't paid for the labor that they do with people. People don't remunerate their labor with an equal quantity of labor. That doesn't make any sense. People aren't paid for their labor, paid for the work that they do in a quantity of labor tokens equal to the amount that they do, and therefore take from the social stock of consumable products something equal to the amount that they put in, kind of thing. In higher stage communism, that might not be the operating principle, but when you start off, you're going to have to use that principle as your, I don't know, operating principle for consumption, I suppose.
Yeah.
But anyway, we got a bit further away from. Where did we start with exchange?
Yeah. Well, it certainly all made me understand the Marx quote a lot more about like you can't own anything but you can't give anything but your labor power. And you can't own anything other than the means of consumption.
Yeah.
I don't think I really understood that prior to really reading this.
Yeah. Yeah. They're both advancing a critique of capitalism, but also giving some principles for what the transition to communism would entail. And one of those principles is the abolition of exchange. By virtue of the fact that you've abolished private property, you have therefore abolished exchange. And by virtue of the fact that you've abolished exchange, you will also abolish value in a capitalist sense, because as we were talking about a few weeks ago, like, and I suppose from, we've really got to stop claiming to have like boasting of how little of Capital we've read, but also for reading Capital. Value is something that is emergent from a process of exchange, kind of thing. Like it's only through exchanging goods on a market that the amount of labor embedded in a product and therefore its value emerges and becomes known, but only in this veiled sense and not directly. So you do also in this new communist society have something very analogous to value, but because it's, as we were saying a few weeks ago, but because it's no longer veiled and because it's directly known, and because that knowledge becomes the conscious operating and directing and fundamental principle of the communist economy, it ceases to function in the same way.
It's demystified.
Yeah. And they do give it a different name, just as they give exchange a different name, they give value a different name. And then with varying degrees of consistency, stick to those pieces of terminology. I think they just call it products of labor or something, or I don't know anyway.
They call what would be a commodity a product, what would be exchange transfer. They're all obviously very different, but they're all also like analogous. Like I said last time, it's like bizarro capitalism, because you see these kind of mirror forms, but then you also like don't, because everything's just better. We were talking a bit before this about there's a definite like Beerian vibe to a lot of this when they talk about Well, maybe I should back up a bit. And the authors bring up Kautsky again, just to kind of dump on him. Because supposedly, Kautsky at one point was like, okay, it would be great to do everything like this, but it's just not possible to calculate these working hours and everything like that at a higher level. It would just be way too much information. Folks, there's no way we could do it. But then their answer to that is, no, you would just leave that calculation up to these individual units, which would be firms, enterprises, or whatever, and let them do it, and then they'll report it to like this bookkeeping agency or whatever, and that gets calculated for other things later on. But basically, the answer to Kautsky is just no, you just leave it up to the individual firms. And there's a lot of talk in the exchange bits about like the difference between these individual productive units, because we're right now just talking about the productive sphere, and the social total of labor basically as a whole. And I found that really, really interesting, because it was very much like you don't really see, we haven't seen so far talk of like the democracy that would make planning work, but they kind of say like out of this, you kind of have an emergent planning in your economy with like an abolition of exchange and an abolition of private ownership. So I just thought it was very interesting kind of comparing that to what we talked about when we talked about Stafford Beer's ideas of the viable system model, which I think we've all been calling it the viable systems model, but just as like, it's best to leave these productive units to just calculate their costs by themselves, tell them to report it, they'll report it, that's all great. But it's also like, again, you see this kind of like recursive state in these firms, not recursive, but like fractal state, I don't know, where like when you zoom in on this individual firm, you also see these same operating principles inside of the firm as like some sort of democratic organization and stuff. And I just thought that like comparison of the whole to the individual unit really, really fascinating, and especially when they just used it to be like, Kautsky, you fool. But also, I mean, I don't know, I would say that that's just a matter of like Kautsky's time, but also like these people weren't too far off writing this, so.
Yeah. There is definitely something cybernetic in the principle that, their overall principle that they're trying to get across is, the book is The Fundamental Principles of Communist Production and Distribution, right? They're trying to lay down the economic fundamentals for a communist society.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they're really harping on quite a lot is how, like, the regulatory features of this society or mode of production, or the planning apparatuses or what have you, are kind of almost organic or internal to the operating of the system.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot have this system without having these particular features that they're describing. Like, it just would not be communism kind of thing. That's often their critique, is like a lot of these things, it's just, this is not communism kind of thing. This is, I meant that state capitalism. This is state capitalism. So it's very cybernetic and very Beerian in the sense that, like, I guess the correctives and the self-regulating aspect is written into the fundamental rules, the fundamental principles kind of thing.
Yeah.
And as we were saying before, the feature of the thinking of other forms of other theories about what communism would be, the ones that we talked about last week, where there is no unit of account and everything is exchange in kind kind of thing, sort of severs a really important link between the power that's gained by workers through their ostensible ownership of the means of production and a huge lack of power that they have by not having the right to dispose of the products, is the phrase that they use, right? Like,
yeah.
They're accusing the state capitalists of not having reconciled this fundamental tension to capitalism, I suppose. Like, there is one point in this where they recapitulate, I suppose, or reintroduce this idea of capitalism having socialized production, but it hasn't socialized control of the means of production, and by virtue control of the products of production kind of thing. And it's the same contradiction that is maintained in state capitalism, or it's the same model that's sort of like, it's the same contradiction which is not overcome in what they often describe as like Hilferding's model, or like
the cartel,
the sort of like the communism as a singular cartel state ownership of all means of production kind of thing. Just to say about Kautsky as a bit of an aside kind of thing, like early on in this book, they are describing him as being somebody who falls into this trap of seeing communism as sort of like transfer of goods under communism as being something that's done in kind and without a unit of account. And then they say that Kautsky interacts with or discovers or sees the critique that's made of that form of production by the Austrian school economists and people involved in the socialist calculation debate on the side of capitalism. And so he realizes that he needs some of the solution. And as you say, he's presented here as sort of admitting, okay, you need a unit of account. And he toys with the idea of using labor time as the unit of account, but for various reasons decides it's not possible. Because, as the book says, he's still too wedded to the idea that you have to have a central planning body kind of thing. And as you indicate, like, the book's answer is that no, you just leave it to the workers. They know best and they can do it. It's quite a simple model that they're presenting. It's not like beyond anybody's wit to sort of like work out how to apply these simple formulas of add three numbers together kind of thing and then pass it on to somebody else. So I think what happens to Kautsky is that he falls back into the realm of like market socialism and money rather than labor time credits, and he
I thought that was all interesting.
Trajectory and slippage back into state capitalism, I suppose.
I'd never heard of this Lichter fellow.
Yeah, I didn't. Lichter comes up quite a lot, and I don't really know. He seems to be an ally of Kautsky's, but there are points in the book where they seem to be using his thinking and seem to give him some justification. I think it's the same as Kautsky, right? Like, the Kautsky and Lichter both sort of entertain this idea, but for various reasons modify it in different ways. I don't know what you came away.
Yeah, I was just going to say pretty much that like they bring him up sometimes as like the answer to Kautsky. It's like he's definitely a lot closer to them in his thinking. But then it'll just fall back on this idea of like, you either see in his thinking a return to some sort of class society, whether it's, I don't remember if it was him or if it was Kautsky or if it was somebody else about like a differentiation in wages, which they were just like, come on, what are you talking about? You can't have that. And that's like a big thing is, later on when they start to talk about like social work that's not productive that you still need to do. Like, how are you going to pay those people without making a new class? They answer it very well. And I guess we'll eventually get to that. But like, Lichter, or however you say it, was definitely... They definitely come closer to agreeing with him than outright just being like, you fool. Like they do with, either Lenin or, any anarchist.
I like to imagine it's pronounced Lichter, like the Tyranid. But anyway.
My God. They're here already. They've been here for hundreds of years. I suppose we should also, just before we move on, we should say that the basic equation that they're doing is extremely simple, that these operational units would do, because it's adding the labor time that goes into your fixed means of production, which, they basically use the examples of like the machines that you're using and the buildings that you're in and all the stuff that needs upkeep, adding that together with the variable capital, which is like the raw materials that you get, the labor time that's involved in that. And then obviously you add the actual labor that goes into making your product. And then those three numbers all add up to the number that you pass on, or that you basically just like give to the producers. In their example, it's shoes. And so they're like, your shoemaking, you add the labor time that's into the upkeep of your shoe machines and your shoe factory building with the leather and rubber and eyelets and stuff that you go into like, making your shoes, the labor that goes into making those shoes, the actual people. And then you get this big number that you then basically divide by the number of shoes that you have. And that's the quote unquote price of the thing, which is like, extremely simple. It's so funny because it's like, I don't know, that's this whole book. It's so simple. It's like, oh, there you go. Yeah. And the numbers, they probably cherry picked numbers to do this, but also like, I like to think that they did some research about what this would take, but they arrive at a very reasonable
I
one
thought
pair of
like
shoes in 3 hours.
3 and a bit hours of work for a pair of shoes. Yeah, fair play.
I was like, all right, that makes sense. Sure. There'll probably be nice shoes too. There'll probably be shoes made to last, as opposed to just shitty shoes.
Yes. They do. They make the the observation that there is a type of accounting that happens under capitalism. Like firms do a certain amount of accounting, capitalists do a certain amount of accounting internal to their firms, and it's the same thing. Firms or operational units, as they describe them under communism, will do a certain amount of accounting for the economic activity that happens internal to that unit of production. And then I suppose that number that you've just described is like, supposing that it's not shoemakers, but like people who make a component of shoes. Like, say you're a factory that makes laces, right?
You're going to say linen.
If you're a factory that makes laces and you work out your number for how many hours are included in each lace, presumably the hours that is taken to produce each pair of laces is added into the calculation that happens in the shoe factory. That becomes part of the circulating capital number kind of thing. So it's just, you're basically just passing on rather than asking a price of, rather than a supplier asking a price of the person that they supply something to, all they do is offer a number for, okay, we're giving you 100 hours of labor worth of laces, add that into your calculation when you come to price your shoes. And then when a shoe goes to I almost said the market.
Oh no!
When the shoe goes to the big shoe warehouse, it carries a price in labor hours of all of the labor that's gone into making a shoe, kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's just a transfer of information in the same way that capitalists account for the activity that happens in their firm.
I was like sweating a bit when I could tell that they were about to give you a number. How funny would it be if they went through this whole thing of being like, this is the best way to do it, and they were like, and so one shoe will cost 625,000 hours of labor. It's like, no. Last week
I guess I'm going to be barefoot in communism.
Yeah, exactly. And it is important to remember, like we said last week, that these are labor hours that go into things. This isn't the amount of time it takes to make one of these things in terms of like grow everything that you need. You're not sitting there timing and like we did the pizza example. You're not growing a tomato.
How long does it take to grow the coconuts that go into making your vegan leather for your shoes?
Yeah, exactly. Is that how they do it?
I think that was a new product that appeared in the hellscape that is a capitalist market a few weeks ago. A few years ago.
I like to think that when everything is a lot more open and demystifying, people would probably be like, and everything's a lot more regionalized, our economies, you'd probably be like,
wearing the skin of animals. Yeah, okay, yeah, we'll get over that.
Don't think I need to wear that skin, perhaps. I think one thing that didn't get mentioned so far, perhaps won't get mentioned in the book, but that I was thinking about was like a lot of this will require, not require, but it will facilitate a shrinking of the unnecessary parts of the economy. And oh my God, that's what excited me so much. Because it's like,
I think we both work in unnecessary parts of the economy.
Well, I mean,
you're definitely feeling that burden at the moment, aren't you?
I was thinking of like going through all of my jobs and trying to be like, which of these jobs were useful? And I settled on probably like 40 to 50% of my jobs have maybe been useful. Maybe like 30 to 35% have been useful. But just shrinking the economy where you just don't need all this faff that capitalism has is just, that's the most tantalizing thing for me. Just get rid of advertisements, get rid of PR, get rid of like what I do. It's just like, I don't know, the shrinking of the economy is what's got me going. It's just like, what is necessary? Not a lot, But again, what you do get will be amazing. It'll be fantastic. It'll be like made to last. I remember when we read the Eden Medina book, The Cybernetic Revolutionaries, they had some pictures of products that were designed. I forget the people who designed them, the Germans, I believe. And they had a picture of the record player, and it was just like, now that's a record player that's made to last. I'm going to sound like a boomer here, but it's like, nothing's made to last anymore. And presumably if something sucks, then you get together with everybody and you're like, what's the deal with this factory? They're making some pretty bum shoes, you know what I mean?
I'm worried I may have said something misleading.
Oh, join the club.
The permanent worry of being a podcaster. I implied that the labor time that goes into making any particular shoe becomes the price of that shoe when it goes to be a product of consumption, which is erroneous. what actually happens, and this is where we get to there being a degree of centralized accounting going on. I don't know whether it's centralized planning, but like you would have to have some kind of centralized accounting bureau. Oh, I suppose, no, in the book they suggest that it's represented by like the shoe industry in general, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
You encounter a physical shoe, and as opposed to like a metaphysical shoe or like a non-corporeal shoe or something. I'm not barefoot because I can't afford in labour hours to buy a shoe under communism. They're actually like invisible.
Figurative.
Yeah, figurative shoes. It's very dialectical. You wouldn't understand. I turn shoes on their head and
Oh God.
Anyway, okay. Yeah, as we were saying, like you have a shoe and you would not pay, if that's the right word to use. Under communism, you would not pay the amount of labour hours that have gone into making that specific shoe.
Yeah.
But all shoes in society would carry a cost, which is the social average amount of time that it takes to make a shoe.
Yeah.
So all shoes in society would have the same price, regardless of whether, in actual fact, any particular shoe has more or less labour in it. Because what you do is average out the amount of time that's been spent, or the amount of hours that have been spent by society making shoes becomes the total social labour in cobbling, I suppose. Cobbling together some shoes.
Oh.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, because that's how you get around the like, okay, these people are making shoes extremely slowly, and that might not be their fault. They might just have some worn out means of production.
Yeah.
They might just have some people that are doing their best, and we'll help them out and we'll replace everything for them and we'll get there. But it's a way of getting around that, like, I think they call it like the poisonous snake, which is like, no, you have to make it socially average. It can't just be like that one factory.
Because you can't, under communism, you don't want your producers to be competing with one another.
Yeah.
And if there was some kind of social imperative to compete to bring down or to modify the amount of time that it took to make shoes, then you would end up having to exploit or otherwise discipline labor as a way to bring down the amount of labor time that it took to make shoes. Kind of thing.
Absolutely. No, that's a really important point, I think.
Now I suppose they'd have to. I don't know whether they talked about it or not. Maybe we'll get to it later. Like there's, as it's suggested in the book, I think like there will be like all shoe producers will be in communications with one another. So I think there will be some ways of moderating or mediating shoe production. Like it
towards a mean.
It will be known how long it takes every shoe factory to make shoes, and if there was somebody diverting wildly from the mean, you might have to be like, what the hell is going on in this place, kind of thing. Do they need, I don't know what it is, like, do they need better access to, do they need better proximity? Is it because they're not as close to the people who produce the things that go into making that shoe, so that they're having to account for much greater transportation costs in labour hours? Or is it, do they have worn out machines? Or is it they just have a workforce which is less skilled, or
is it the opposite?
Less able? Or is it
they're doing really well? How can we all figure this out to lower the price of shoes?
How can we all emulate this so that we can bring down the amount of hours in work that has to go into every shoe, or we can actually reduce the number of social hours that has to go into shoemaking, and either distribute that labor or have those people work less, I suppose.
Yeah. Say a shoe.
What?
Say a shoe.
A shoe.
Bless you. I was trying to spit that in.
A shoe entirely.
Oh!
Any
God, one up me there.
I eschew the implication that I should find that joke funny. There we go, got there eventually.
Yeah, that was good. Also you bring up a really important point, which is the bookkeeping aspect of it. And it's so fascinating because it's like bookkeeping under capitalism. They say, it's like relatively passive, but you're also like, they kind of just say like, the books are kind of just sitting there. They just kind of do their thing and they just sit there. It's like a snapshot of what's going on. Here, it's like, yes, you will be reporting all of this to like some sort of statistics geek who will collate all this information so that you're able to have like...
Maybe that can be Jack's job.
I'd be bad at it. It's addition, but I'd be bad at it. Get some sabermetrics guy on it. Basically, they say you report all these hours so that everybody knows in all of the productive sphere the total social labor that's going on, basically for planning purposes. But the statistics people, not the planning people, the statistics people, the like people adding all of this up, that's just to have the books. The bookkeeping explicitly, it just sits there. The books are just sitting there. They are just books. You just have these numbers for whatever you eventually will decide to do with them, because if it was some sort of like centralized planning bureau, they make the point that it's like that would inevitably lead towards some kind of exploitation, because it's like, or at least exploitation, but maybe it would be better to just say some sort of top-down decision making. And this is very much a bottom-up kind of socialism. And so the bookkeeping, again, this kind of blew my mind when I read it. It's just to have those numbers, and it's not for any kind of competition, anything like that. It's just so because you do need to have this social total for reasons that we'll get into. Should we talk about this general social work, I guess, because that's kind of why you need to have those numbers.
Yeah.
That was another big question I had, other than how do goods get transferred between productive spheres. It's like, okay, I don't work in a productive, job capacity. Let's say I did something useful. How would that get quote unquote paid for? How would I get my quote unquote wage? And it's really interesting the way that they kind of come up to say it. It took me a while to read it, to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's fascinating. The general social work.
Yeah, they do recognize that there are types of labor that don't produce a product that can bear a representation of its worth in terms of labor hours, kind of thing. Most of these are services.
Yeah.
Like they talk about education and healthcare and people who contribute to the production of culture and the like.
And just things you decide on, right? Like, let's go to the moon.
Yeah.
Like, there you go. We look at all this surplus we got. Let's go to the moon. Why not? We're not surplus. But yeah.
But yeah, they... And it's funny, right? They very rapidly... Because one solution to this problem would be, well, whenever anybody buys a service, they would just pay that person in labor hours. Because anybody providing the service can still work out how many labor hours have gone into providing that service, kind of thing. They can work out how much work they put into it. They can work out how much work has gone into, like, the ancillary or the variable, supposing that they've consumed some variable capital or something. Like, you can still use the same accounting formula to work out how many labor hours have gone into that service, kind of thing. But it's impossible for the producer of that service to relate to the economy in the same way as people who are producing a physical product. And they basically just say it would be undesirable or impossible in some instances to have people just pay.
Yeah.
But then, as you say, that would represent a introduction of well, you said before, I don't know whether it was this instance that you were referring to in particular, but it does kind of like sound like a introduction of a new class of person, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You would have people who are remunerated based on their contribution to labor to society in general, but then you would have this class of person who has a specific relationship to their labor, not as a feature of the total social labor, but like has a unique relationship to their own labor, kind of thing. And people would buy that service. It would be very much like you'd be reintroducing sort of like features or tendencies of capitalism, which this model is trying to eschew, kind of thing.
Bless you.
So instead, they try and work out, well, how are we going to remunerate these people? Obviously, we know what work they've done, or they can report in the same way that other industries report what labor they've done, or basically what they suggest is these industries would budget for themselves a certain quantity of labor hours, either in things that they consume to be able to provide their service or in their own labor hours, and they would have to then put that budget to society and be like, will you give us a certain quantity of social labor to be able to achieve these ends, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then they go through a whole series of different ways in which that budget would be drawn up, I suppose. And basically the two options that they settle on is either you manipulate the prices of things so that a central body can take from society a certain quantity of labor hours in the form of, basically it's like a value added tax almost, and then redistribute that back. Or you can actually manipulate people's pay, so that, I think the example that they use is like somebody works a 40-hour week, but actually they're only remunerated 32 hours worth of social labor, because those are the 8 hours of social labor go toward funding these other services, which they obviously draw from and benefit from, kind of thing. So it's kind of like a tax. It's like an income tax rather than a value added tax in a lot of ways.
It's important to say not just that though as well, because it isn't just general social work that's getting taken out of that. It's also like replacement of means of production.
Sure, that was it. Yeah, do you want to elaborate on that a bit, because you did explain this to me before we started recording, and it's helpful for me. I didn't really thought about it in that way.
Yeah, just briefly to just say that, like, they use the example of, okay, how are we going to pay these people? They say, if you imagine that everybody makes everything in society and they just put it in a big ass warehouse, right? They use the metaphor of, okay, well, first, before you just get to choose what you want to take, you need to worry about these people, like what you're saying, the general social work. That budget gets taken away of everything that gets made, which is a certain percentage, whatever that would be of the budget. That would eventually go down as we proceed towards higher communism. But then something else that also has to get taken away, which is quite a bit smaller, is the replacement of means of production. So that's like when they do the example of the basic formula of how you calculate labor hours that go into a product. It's, fixed capital plus variable capital plus labor equals your product. That's the first thing. That's the fixed capital, basically. And it isn't that, you have to calculate the percentage of like help that this machine that's made this thing has gone into making this product. It isn't that. It's just that, like, it's upkeep. And it's basically like, okay, in this production cycle, we screwed up, the machine broke, we had to get a new one. So that gets added onto the product. So that is like society also, as we can think of it as like a communist tax. I've heard people say, the tax goes towards this general social work, but it also goes towards replacing means of production. And you can think about that again as like a type of metabolic rift. It's necessary to happen, and it's not huge. And in this book, they basically make the point that it's like that would be much lower than variable capital would be. But it's necessary. Replacement of means of production is something that gets taken out. So again, it's this rift of, we came across this last week when we talked about the Gotha program, where they were basically saying, our goal is to give you exactly what you put into society. And Marx was like, no, because there are these deductions that would need to happen. It's these two things. It's the general social work and it's replacement of means of production, basically. Because you don't have to worry about variable capital in that. So, yeah.
Very nice.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, those are the two big questions I had, I think, going into this. And I still have a couple more questions. Hopefully they'll get answered later in the book. I mean, again, the pacing of this book is very good at answering your questions. But yeah, my two big questions were like, okay, how do goods get transferred in the productive sphere, and how do non-productive sphere people maintain themselves? And yeah, it's really interesting. Assuming that any of the numbers that they use are anywhere close to being correct, it is awesome because it's like what do they call it? The payout factor or something like that?
Yeah. This is the kind of like
payout factor.
Yeah, I don't know whether that's the degree which is deducted from people's quota of social of labor hours which goes toward their consumption, or whether it's the degree that's deducted, whether it's the pay or whether it's the deduction, which is the production factor or what have you. But.
Yeah. Well, regardless, I'm trying to find out the number that they settle on. They basically say that all workers together work 650 million hours. That's 600 million in productive operational units and 50 million in public ones. But so that leaves only 542 million working hours left for consumption. So everybody gets 542 divided by the total, which is 650. And so that leaves you 0.83. And so that's basically like for every hour you work, you get remunerated 0.83 of a working hour, which still sounds pretty good. And again, if you make the point that it's like all of your work is going into making things better, and not like crap, it amounts to a tax, but a good one.
And you don't have a boss taking most of what you contribute in your labor to the value of something.
Exactly.
You benefit from, or society benefits, and by virtue of the fact that you're going to get an equal share of what society has, you benefit from there not being an exploiting class, which takes the bulk of social values kind of thing.
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that like the economic model is not minded toward exchange values, but is actually minded toward the production of useful things. for
Yeah,
people,
imagine
kind of
that.
thing. What a shocker. What a shocker. Yeah, as an extension of that, I suppose maybe it's quickly worth mentioning they unsurprisingly, they align themselves with Marx once again. When he says in the Critique of the Gotha program that well, it's actually I suppose it's a different thing which he is saying. You know, when he says that the amount of what you deduct from the total social stock of labor hours, the amount that goes toward administration stuff shrinks, and what Marx suggests is over time the amount that goes toward services and products which are free at the point of consumption grows. In this book, they're suggesting for something very similar, that over time, the quantity of labor hours going toward the general social work, what do they call it?
Yeah, general social work, yeah.
would grow, by which I mean the proportion of the economy which, when you as an individual interact with it, functions as take as need rather than take as you're able to pay kind of thing, grows. And they suggest that this would be a natural feature of the way a communist economy would expand kind of thing. So their suggestion is that they've built into their model, they've built into the fundamental principles of their communist system a natural tendency for the movement from each according to their ability to pay, based on their ability to contribute, to from each according to their need. Kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, again, amounts to what has a much more specific, I realize has a much more specific meaning now, the withering away of the quote-unquote state.
Yeah.
Because that's basically the same thing. It's like all of this administrative stuff. It's built into the system that it will eventually wither away.
Yeah.
As we develop.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Was it in this, or did I hallucinate it, where they said that they were like, and we actually didn't know about Marx's Critique of the Gotha program.
They said they hadn't read the Critique of the Gotha program until they'd written, and then I suppose they must be referring to the first edition, right? Like when they wrote the first edition or whoever it was, he wrote the first edition in the early 30s. They hadn't read the Critique of the Gotha program. It was only by the mid 30s that they became aware of it.
I mean,
and just discovered that Marx basically said everything that they said, kind of thing. I mean, it's a real boast. Kind of thing,
I know. It's like, did you?
Yeah.
It's also like there are points in this where I'm pretty sure they've quoted at least one paragraph in the Critique of the Gotha program like 3 separate times.
Sure.
And it's
but this is the second edition.
Sure, but it's also it's like.
But they drop it in halfway through the book.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Oh yeah, by the way, when we say like the Marxist model, we didn't actually realise that this was Marx's model. When we suggested it was the Marxist model, we were just elaborating on trends in Marx. We hadn't actually read Marx's declarative statement on it, i.e. the Critique of the Gotha program. Yeah,
it's like, all right, guys, geez. Yeah. Flex. God. Also, I think it may be worth just saying off the back of what you were talking about, like, we were talking right before this about the how this would actually affect your day-to-day life. And I think when we talk about this tax where it's like, okay, I'm not getting exactly what I put in, I think day one, let's just say that you were able to implement this all over the world immediately. Day one, you would go, wow, I'm able to get a lot more stuff than I would with my wage. You'd be like, holy crap.
Yeah.
And the stuff that I'm getting is a lot better.
Yeah.
I think that, immediately that would just be like, whoa, hit you in the face.
Yeah. Yeah,
my labor's worth something.
I'm made more and more of a communist every time I have to take a train in this country. Because every time I have to take this train in this country, I'm like, why the fuck is this not free?
Yeah, no kidding. Not free, and down here it's so
fucking expensive. Yeah,
such a joke. It's like the buses. The buses are insane. It can cost you like almost £3 to go a mile. It's like, what is going on? Yeah.
And there's something I wanted to bring up actually that we've just overlooked a little bit, in that the reason why they settle on this a deduction in people's quote-unquote pay rather than a tax added on or a manipulation of prices is that they don't really want to manipulate prices, because if you manipulate prices, what you're doing is blurring or obscuring the information that's available to consumers and producers to know actually what's happening in the economy, kind of thing. Why did I come onto this? I don't know. Because it's quite fundamental to their model is that it's clear and everybody knows what is happening, kind of thing. So when you take a product from the social stock, you know exactly how much social labor has gone into it, and you know what you're paying for it is directly equal to that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Be empowering.
Yeah.
To be like,
so exactly. That's why I brought it up, kind of thing. Like you were saying, what would this feel like, kind of thing. It removes a huge layer of mystification that we don't even know we're experiencing most of the time, kind of thing.
To actually be able to realize what your labor is worth.
It's living in a world without commodity fetishism.
Exactly. Yeah. To be able to realize what your labor is worth would be like, you'd be like, whoa, why didn't I get this sooner? Like, my labor is worth a lot more than I'm told.
Yeah. And this is another point. It's worth bringing up something that we've kind of overlooked. There's a point in this book where they're siding against Kautsky and Lichter again. Kautsky and Lichter, basically in the book, they suggest, based on Kautsky and Lichter's class position, think that people are going to have to be paid different wages based on the type of work that they do. Whereas in this book, the group of international communists are like, no, absolutely not. Everybody should be paid exactly the same wage. And if you, the example that Kautsky gives, which is a more compelling one, I suppose, in some cases, is that there might be types of work that are less desirable to do than others, and you might need to feel like you had to incentivize some people to do those other things. I mean, we could come up with some other options for that kind of thing. Like,
but
the
the
really undesirable stuff could just be divided equally amongst people, so everybody has to do a very small amount of things which are socially agreed upon to be undesirable. Or what you could do is direct your production toward making those jobs unnecessary.
I think it would be both of those, but it's also like you still need to work. It's still the same thing. Not everybody can make shoes, so it's like, I don't know. I feel like that question is kind of unnecessary. It's like,
but then I suppose it does come back to this thing in Marx about like equality not being the aim, kind of thing.
Yeah,
they're much more. There is a point in this where they sort of side on the side of like the economic model, and therefore the freedom imbuing benefits of that economic model as against justice. There's a point in which they're saying like we are willing to accept to begin with an unjust way of remunerating. We're willing to accept any injustices or any perceived injustices that come about from paying everybody exactly the same amount. I think in this instance they're talking about like say you have far more dependents, children that you have to support on your wage, kind of thing, or I don't know, people have other living costs or not.
Yeah.
So there is this personal perceivable unfairness in people's individual cut of the social product that they get. But they seem to say that what we're willing to accept that if we'd much rather have a degree of what we were describing at the beginning, this kind of like social equality kind of thing. We'll take the system which fosters sort of freedom, and we'll accept a certain amount of inequity as a result of that kind of thing.
Yeah. Presumably that again would go down as time goes on.
Yeah, one would hope. Yeah. And I suppose you could have other ways of remunerating that, right? Like you could have part of your general social work, a certain amount that goes to what would be the equivalent in this country you'd call like child benefit or something, like a certain number of labor hours that could be given to people we could just be given to the parents of children, kind of thing. You could just do it for every child, right? You could just be like, here, have a few labor hours to support this child. All children get all parents get a certain amount based on how many children they have, kind of thing.
Or kids could work.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. I mean, all the group of international communists ought side, as they always do with Marx, and decide that child labor is good.
Yeah, there we go.
As we have already done.
Exactly. I'm still trying to figure out what Marx meant when he said it's impossible to have developed society without child labor. I'm still trying to figure that one out. I'm sure there's something to it, but I'm like,
yeah. Is this the mistaken thinking of someone who lived in the 19th century?
Yeah. Someone's got to be small enough to get in those machines.
Yeah.
Another, you bring up an interesting point, which is like this labor that's seen as like, even whether it's really physical labor or like that somebody's got to clean up the poop pipe or like whatever. It's like, how do you not foster some kind of class mentality in the people who just not sit around, but like professors who sit around versus like, someone who works in a warehouse, you know what I mean? Like maybe it would just be a certain like social like Really? You're not gonna, like, a little bit of peer pressure, like, come on, do your part. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Or like you would just kind of accept because that quote unquote wage is the same across the board. You're not going to be able to show like one guy's not going to be driving an Audi and the other guy's driving like a Saab or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose after a certain period of time, there would be no, as you say, there would be no like social benefit. There would be no material benefit that comes from having a role like that kind of thing. I mean, I suppose there might be social prestige attached to certain
Just
things.
a physical benefit.
Yeah.
Just laying around.
Yeah.
Not, I keep saying that's what professors do, but like physical labor versus non-physical labor.
Yeah. On the toll it would take. I see. Yeah.
But again, as the productive apparatus,
Well, this is Marx's,
like
this basic in the critique of the Gotha program. This is the basis, the basic foundation for higher stage communism, as it's presented by Marx, is just a massive revolution in the means of production.
Yeah, I like the Cuban model. Everybody's got to do some work. Everybody's got to do some crappy work. I don't know. Yeah, maybe that can just be something where you just kind of go, yeah, because there is no material benefit really, is there? Unless it's like, wow, this guy's using his labor tokens to buy a lot of like corduroy jackets with elbow pads for some reason.
Or Karl Marx compendiums.
Yeah, exactly.
Collected works. Yeah, but the basic starting point of that would be to recognize everybody's labor as being equal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Let's just do it. Let's just make this stuff happen. That's what I say. This book rocks, man.
Yeah.
Every time we talk about it, I get excited because it is exactly what they're saying. It's a positive addition to socialism and communism. It's not just a negation of capitalism. It's actually adding something new, which you can get excited about.
Mm-hmm.
It's like what they're trying to do with, I almost said Falk, but actually like putting a reason to like, here's why you would be more excited about a communist society than simply not being treated like shit at work.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
Positive.
And it's such a like I mean, compared to like full automation, it's such a like human centered thing, right? Like
Yeah. We love humans.
Like yeah. Human beings make and I was going to say maybe this is contentious. Human beings make and remake the mode of production kind of thing. Like,
yeah.
And we're in a position to radically remake the mode of production.
Yeah.
And we don't need to wait around for the technology of communism to be bestowed upon us by
someone from top.
Someone from California.
Yeah, fire season started apparently early.
Yeah.
It's what, June? So we got that going for us. That's nice.
Got another 10 months of that to look forward to.
I know, no kidding. It's just like, oh my God. Yeah, how will our planned society fix that? Presumably not by just polluting and not by doing things that are profitable, but crappy. I do get the feeling that...
So it's global warming. Is it also like poor water management?
It's
like
PG&E too, mainly. Like these big fires that have been started. I don't know what the situation is now.
Yeah, go on.
But it's just that like I don't really, at least in the past when the big fire happened around where I live, it was like, so many times these fires start because PG&E has a private monopoly on supplying parts.
This is a utility provider, right?
Yeah. Pacific Gas and Electric providing power, and they just have the crappiest infrastructure. So like a transformer will blow and it'll burn down like 1 million acres and kill like 1,000 people. It's just like cool, awesome. Just because it's profitable to not replace your goddamn means of production.
Yeah.
That's what you're gonna do.
Yeah. This is a sort of like. There is an analogous and also entirely opposite problem in this country with the water companies. My understanding is that like a grotesque amount of water is lost through like leaky pipes in this country. Like it's just ridiculous. And then we are paying through the nose for water.
Yeah. In our communist society, there will be one long tube that goes from England to California to end that metabolic drift.
All the leaky pipes will be built in.
Yeah, exactly. Just saturate the ground. Pollute as much as you want. Just saturate the ground.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
the capitalists need to stop lighting California on fire.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Please. I remember there was like a big conspiracy theory during COVID where all of a sudden, like in America, I don't know how it was here, but like nobody had masks, and the government was actively being like, just don't wear a mask. It'll actually make things worse if you do wear a mask, to cover up for the fact that we didn't have the productive capacity to give everybody masks. And there was a big conspiracy theory because like everybody who worked at the Facebook campus had masks, and like really good masks immediately. And everyone was like, whoa, Facebook must have designed this virus so that, and you know, they just knew that it was coming. And it was like, no, they just had those masks from the last wildfire. So
Right.
it's like, yeah, there's a simple explanation. All right, folks. Well, Dan and I are going to attempt to, next time we talk about this book, to finish it.
I think it's doable.
I think it's doable. Yeah. So that'll be chapters 12 through 17. I love a final chapter that's called Final Considerations. Just tie it all up in a neat bow. Yeah.
There's a chapter on the dictatorship of the proletariat.
Yeah, hopefully that'll answer some questions too.
I think this the new section's going to start by telling us again how stupid the Bolsheviks were. So there's lots of good things to look forward to.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's going to be much about the democratic structures that would have to be organized to like facilitate getting what you want out of production.
Yeah.
But that's why we have our boy Stafford beer.
Yes.
Perhaps that's why we have cybernetics.
Yeah, I was speculating beforehand that perhaps like that is something that falls outside of the fundamental principles kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they are council communists, right? Like, and they do make reference to the councils quite a lot. So I would imagine there are going to be very different types of council in different guises and different forms that oversee certain types of things. But I think that might be a political situation which is outside of the scope of this book, but will facilitate the running of this kind of society, I suppose.
It's funny when they were like, libertarian communists have no theory beyond all power to the councils or all powers to the workers. I was like, wait a minute, I thought that's what council communists thought.
We're so confused right now.
These people are like omega councilists. They're like big brain, like the meme of like council communists, group of international communists, like the brain getting bigger.
Like syndicalists.
Yeah, exactly.
Anarchist syndicalists.
I wonder, have you seen the meme where it's like the iceberg and it's like when you get into something, it's like, I don't know, when you get into like music and it's like top of the iceberg Beatles and then bottom is like some esoteric, like, you know, black MIDI thing or something like that. I wonder where this falls on like communism. When you get to, when you like, where are you at the point?
You go under the surface, where in the iceberg do you reach this book?
Do you read this book?
Yeah.
Because there is like a niche of people online that are like, nobody else has talked about this book. I can finally come out and talk about this book. It's so funny.
I mean, I wonder whether those people feel sad that now this has gotten it's been. I mean, I don't know how widely read it is, but it's widely available and published. Clearly, it's rising up. It's becoming less like there's a Rosetta, not the Rosetta Stone, but like the lost text kind of thing.
Yeah. You can't impress people by being like, well, have you read the fundamental principles of communist production and distribution?
Well, I think there's a period of time where one person might have tried to impress somebody with that idea and then failed. And I think maybe we're entering the period of time, I hope, where you can actually impress people by having read this book. And then hopefully it'll become so widely read and, oh yeah, fuck off, all right.
Yeah, all right. Me and my council that I'm part of. Yeah, you know, my Uber council.
Yeah. Wait till the DSA reading groups are reading this book.
Oh no. I mean, cool. That'd be great. I heard something about Trotskyists trying to take over DSA. I was like, we still have Trotskyists?
That's like Trotskyists being Trotskyists.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I had no idea that we still had Trotskyists. I'd like to find a Trotskyist and ask them to tell me what a Trotskyist is. Yeah. Because it's like, if they'll just permanent revolution. It's like, all right, keep going.
I mean, but I think there are as many types of Trotskyists as there are Trotskyists.
Yeah, oh God.
It's even worse than Marxism in general.
That's the bottom of the iceberg. One specific sect of Trotsky.
Yes.
Like, we have to find what that is.
Reading a particular pamphlet from a particular year of a now defunct sort of Trotskyist. It was a pamphlet that was designed to propagate a split that never actually happened.
Yeah, they're getting in front of this split.
Yeah.
Did you tell the story on the show about at the Palestinian solidarity protest about the like very nice socialist that came up to you and you're like,
I didn't know. No. I was quite disappointed by the interaction because like She gave me her leaflet. I don't know. I think I chucked it away. It was some Trotskyist group, right? It was some iteration of Socialist Party. So I was like, I don't know. Maybe she realized I was kind of trolling her a little bit, but I also did kind of want to have I don't know. Maybe I was very ungenuine.
You wanted to know.
I was ungenuine in my efforts to have a genuine conversation with her, and it showed. And she was like, "Well, fuck, I'm just going to get away from this person as quickly as possible." So I sort of just started rattling off never heard of this Socialist Party, but I mean, I know about this Socialist Party of England and Wales, and I know about the Socialist Party of Great Britain. And she was like, "Oh no, we're not the Socialist Party of Great Britain." And she must have realized this person clearly knows more than
this person knows his sex.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And I can't. And then I know, but what she did, like she clearly realized, okay, this person knows, and then immediately told me who it was that she'd split from and why.
When I tell that story, I tell it as you just asking her directly, where did you split from?
Who did you split from?
Yeah, that was good.
But then she didn't tell me why they'd split, or she didn't seem not to want to have any more.
These people even know why they've split?
I don't know. Yeah, I can't remember where they were coming from, or where they were going. I don't know whether they know.
Yeah. I'd like to form a sect one day.
Yeah. I'll be in your sect, Jack.
Oh, good. And then we can split.
All right. Oh shit! No, we can't ever join. Yeah, if we ever join a sect together, we're almost obliged to split, and that'll be the end of the podcast. So.
Yeah. Oh no. Oh god.
Rival podcast.
We should read some Trotsky one day.
Yeah. All right.
Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I started reading some Trotsky in the lockdown last year, and he's a good writer, and I found it very compelling.
Yeah.
I mean, the stuff I was enjoying most was some like diaries that I was
thing.
reading from like. When he was in Siberia, before like in the early 1900s, in the early 20th century, even before 1905. Like,
see, I want to know about Trotsky as like General Trotsky, as when people were like, Napoleon Trotsky, is that what's going to happen? I kind of want to know about, because you get it, like when he was just in Ukraine, like joining different groups and like hanging out and being the like wild-haired like socialism guys, you kind of get the feeling that he was a bit of a nerd. And then it's like, I don't know much about him, and then all of a sudden he's a general.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, okay, what happened there?
Yeah.
I want to know a little bit about that. I want to know about General Trotsky.
Yeah. And I'm sort of into the idea of permanent revolution. So, as opposed to this sort of, I mean, in the context of when it was proposed, I understand it as being something that was being opposed or counterposed to this idea of like rigid stagism.
Yeah.
Not this isn't stagism in terms of that there being stages to the transition to communism. This is like, first you have your bourgeois revolution, and then and then like history unfolds in a dialectical way, and it's far be it from mortal men to contend with attempting to oppose the dialectical unfolding of history.
Did any of these people read Marx? I'm beginning to think it's like, guys, come on. It's like, this is just so far away from the question we should be asking.
It's Marx, Engels, and then the group of international communists.
Exactly.
That's it.
Maybe Rosa Luxemburg in there for a little bit.
It would be a bit fair. Okay.
Yeah, again, we should read some Rosa Luxemburg. All right, plenty to read.
Okay. Yeah. Have we produced enough content that we can
I think
stop?
we've produced enough content. I'm going to give the listeners a peek behind the curtain and say that we'll actually be recording 2 episodes this week, which is pretty fun because we got to get ahead of it because life keeps getting in the way.
I'm going to go on a holiday.
Dad's going on holiday. Look at that.
I'm going to go to Wales.
Yeah, I'm jealous.
Yeah,
I think
I'm excited. I'm going to go swimming in the sea. Hopefully the
Wow.
weather lasts.
Yeah.
I'm going to go on walks. I'm going to go and see my parents. Going to spend 6 hours on a train.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
It'll be beautiful, though.
Yeah.
I want to go to Wales.
Yeah.
I mean, Also, let's apologize. Capital, we will be getting back to it.
Yeah,
Life
one of
does
these
keep
days.
getting in the way.
Yeah.
Things keep happening. We'll get to it. It's just a bit of a faff at the moment. Work, folks. Yeah, not great. And we're also reading a book right now. Okay, we're reading a whole
reading
book.
exactly one book.
Yeah. Oh, and
Trying to read other things.
yeah. Well, actually, I'm not going to say what I was about to say about what we will potentially be reading
In a few weeks
very
on.
soon. Yes, very exciting.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Is it a new mystery book or is it a former mystery book?
Yeah.
Who can say?
Yeah, I was gonna tease it, but I was like, I already did that. So.
It's all teased out. Nobody cares.
The third eye will be opening slightly larger. It won't be opening completely until we get to part 3.
Yeah, I don't think I can handle that. So, like,
Yeah, you will.
ease me in, Jack.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll slightly open the third eye soon. Lot going on. We got to finish this book. We got to get to that. we've got stuff planned, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
And,
we're almost getting to the point now where we actually have some idea where we're going. We have a few episodes planned out. We have some idea of what we might like to read. We're not making it up 2 days before we need to record the damn thing.
And also, folks, let us know what you'd like us to read. Because that'd actually be pretty cool. Because a lot of you seem very cool. I mean, obviously, it's like, why would you be listening to something unless you're interested in it? So we must have some sort of overlap in interests. But folks,
and because you're interested in what we have to say, by virtue of that fact, you are cool.
Yes, exactly.
I bestow upon you the title of cool.
I mean, who knows how many
when we
people
lose all
listen
our
to the end.
listeners,
Yeah, exactly. We should have said this up front. But hey, what are you going to do?
Yeah. Let us know if you're still listening.
Yeah. Rate 5
like
stars.
comment at this point on SoundCloud. Like timestamp it and comment at this point.
Yeah.
And tell us what we should read.
And tell us why podcasters do not belong to the general social world. They'll be exiled.
Yeah, will there be professional communist podcasters? Will there be professional podcasters under communism?
I mean, then we would just really drag out episodes because it's like, well, that was actually 2 hours of social labor. So please.
Oh, yeah, I definitely did like 10 hours reading for the podcast this week.
He said he did 10 hours of podcasting, but his episode was 10 minutes. Interesting.
I edited a lot out.
Yeah. We will solely...
It was all editing time.
Yeah, exactly. We will have gulag solely for podcasters and podcaster affiliates in this communist society. All right, let's end it. My name has been Jack, and I'll let you introduce yourself and the third person in the show.
My name has been Dan. I'm also sat above a very warm cat. I have a very long-haired cat, and I don't know whether we've mentioned, but it's pretty warm at the moment.
Yeah, folks.
And she is suffering somewhat. But she's all right. She looks pretty comfortable. She's rolling about on her back.
Yeah. It's been a while since she'd recorded with us.
Yeah, we haven't had a cat in the room in a while. She suddenly realised that we're talking about her.
Yes,
we're both looking at her.
Could you make it more obvious?
Oh, I don't know how I feel about this. Okay, so I've been Dan, Meowgrat's been Meowgrat.
Jack's
this has
been Jack.
Auxiliary Statements.
Yes, thank you very much for listening. We'll see
been a
you
blast.
next time.
Bye-bye.
The music you heard this episode was Music to Kill Bad People To by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. If you like this song, you can check it out and much, much more on their Bandcamp at kinggizzard.bandcamp.com. Be sure and follow us up on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you like what you heard, be sure and tune in next week for some more commie discussion. Till next time.